Hey everybody, I'm Ryan, and it happened again. There's a new banned and restricted announcement. So what I wanted to do is look at the banned and restricted announcement, talk about what I think about it, and what I think the formats will do in the future. So I hope you'll join me. So there are two shakeups in Standard and in Modern. In Standard, the Meathook Massacre has been banned, and in Modern, Yorion the Sky Nomad is banned. So what I want to do first is look at the formats and the reasoning for not having no shakeups at all in Legacy and in Pioneer. Both formats, people have complained about oppressive decks. So what they said about Pioneer is that overall, Pioneer looks to be in a good place as we head into the Regional Championship qualifier season throughout November and December. We're seeing a wide variety of strategies employed by the most popular decks. The most played on Magic Online is Rakdos Midrange with about 13% of the metagame share. None of the top 20 most played decks have a non-mirror match win rate of more than about 53%. In general, we've heard a lot of positivity from players about the state of the format. I'm not sure if that's true. We'll continue to keep an eye on the health of the format, especially as it undergoes more competitive pressure with the regional championship qualifiers. As things currently stand, we don't anticipate any changes before or during that season. So my thought on that, Pioneer being my favorite format at the moment, is that Rakdos Midrange, while is a giant part of the format, and actually I'm surprised I didn't mention Mono Green being a giant part of the format. So people have expressed that Mono Green and Rakdos have been oppressive to the format, and here are my thoughts on it. I think Rakdos is the most employed deck in Pioneer because some of the best players are creating content about it. If you jump into Pioneer, there's the most literature about Rakdos. There's much more about Rakdos than any other deck. So of course, when people start looking up decks and what they want to play, Rakdos is definitely presented as one of the best decks. Now, people talking about Mono Green, and this is just maybe this is my own inbred culture of FNM and whatnot. But people have been calling for some bannings out of Mono Green too, but I don't think Mono Green is hyper oppressive. I actually think that it's the best deck, but the issue is the best players are playing red black, so it's hard to actually make that claim. But in the best players not necessarily playing Mono Green, it's not putting up the results I think it deserves. So nothing's going to be banned out of it until that actually happens. And at the same time, I'm not actually sure if Mono Green deserves a ban. It is definitely unfun to play against because of the infinite combos, but is it that hard to do well against it? Probably not. So I think I agree with this decision. I think as things shake up in the future and as people are more and more competitive about Pioneer in this obviously evolving format, I think we will end up seeing shakeups to red black or even Mono Green, but we'll see what happens in the future. I have nothing to say about Vintage. I only play Vintage when I absolutely have to, when I play the Hogak deck, and I just kind of it's either my deck does the thing or it doesn't. So I have no clue what to say about Vintage. But let's talk about Legacy. So I actually play Blue Red Delver in Legacy, and I think Blue Red Delver is pretty oppressive. I think something should be banned out of it. It feels incorrect to not be playing Blue Red Delver, to be totally honest. But what they said about Legacy is the Legacy metagame is looking healthy, with top decks all having strength and weaknesses against each other. Since the ban of Ragaman Nimble Pilferer in January, the most popular deck Is It Delver has had a win rate trend downward. I mean, I believe that Ragavan was messed up. According to Magic Online data, it represents about 9% of the field. That's huge in such an Eternal format, by the way. It has an overall non-mirror match win rate of 52%, with both positive and negative matchups against the next 10 most played decks. The past year has brought several new impactful cards to competitive Legacy, including Unlicensed Hearse, Fable, Mirror Breaker, Ledger Shredder, Leyline Binding, and more. We're excited to see the format continue to grow as new cards lead to new strategies. As always, we'll continue to monitor how metagame develops. Right now seems to be in a good spot. So the thing about Legacy is the reason Blue Red Delver is super, super good is because it has game against everything. So while its overall win rate is right in the middle, I think that's why it's good in Legacy. If you have a very good Delver player, you can just run reasonably hot. It doesn't really matter what you get paired against, and you're doing fine. Where it feels like a lot of the other archetypes in the format don't have that. It's very matchup dependent. You just win or just lose, and that leads to you often not being successful. So if you just lose against some, just win against some, and then get paired against Delver and we'll see, and oh, they had a bunch of Force of Wills and the 50-50 matchup went poorly. I think that's really tough. And then in addition to being just under 50-50 with their bad matchups, they're being a lot of their good matchups, they like are well over 50-50. So it's really tough to like, I see the justification for not banning anything out of Legacy, but as a Legacy player, man, Delver's kind of oppressive. So this is surprising to me. So let's look at the two shakeups. So let's first off start with Standard, because I have a little less to say about Standard than Modern. So the Meathook Massacre is being banned. So let's look at the Meathook Massacre. The Meathook Massacre is black, black, X, a legendary enchantment, and it says when the Meathook Massacre enters the battlefield, each creature gets -X until end of turn. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Whenever a creature an opponent control dies, you gain 1 life. So what happens here is it's a board wipe for creatures, and then the Blood Artist-ish effect stays on the battlefield indefinitely. You can play multiple of these, but you can only keep 1. And the -X is a trigger, so you don't. So if you like play a second one, you don't get like triggers from both of the legendary enchantments, like from the trigger, from the -X. And so let's look at the reasoning, and we'll talk about it. As is often the case, the standard card pool rotation with the release of Dominator United caused quite a shakeup, with cards from the new set finding their places into decks, and many of last year's cards shifting context within the new metagame. As the format has settled into place, the color black has proven powerful and prolific, and makes up the foundation of many of the top decks. Despite the commonly shared color, we're seeing good diversity among competitive decks and strategies, and player engagement with the format has been healthy. I'm not sure if that last line is correct. At least on Magic Online, every single time I've done a Standard League, I've had to play the same player twice. But, you know, teach their own. To provide a small push against the color black's play rate among competitive decks, we're choosing to ban 1 black card. We've discussed several different options, and no single black card stood out as the major power outlier played by all the decks containing black. Ultimately decided the banning the Meathook Massacre was the best choice, as it's one of the most powerful black cards in the format, and especially powerful against one specific archetype, decks that rely on a lot of small creatures, and has had its time to shine in Standard for over a year. With the Brothers War on the horizon, we anticipate the new cards entering the format to provide tools for other decks and color combinations in the meantime. We expect this shakeup will help keep Standard enjoyable and trending toward an even healthier spot going forward as the card pool expands. I don't know about this. So, to me, it seems like they took all the black cards that the black decks share and just threw a dart at a dartboard. Like, that's essentially what they're saying. Banning of the Meathook Massacre, I don't think Meathook Massacre is the thing that is making the black decks better. I do like that they purposefully chose a card that neuters a specific archetype. So that's cool, because because black decks being the most popular deck, I think they'll remain the most popular deck because, again, there's no power outliers, just like it runs a lot of the good cards. I think it means that, you know, another archetype will be viable and like black will remain very good and we move on with our lives. It looks like they just kind of like felt like black was too powerful. Let's ban one thing out of it that was neutering a certain archetype, and we'll see what happens with the Brothers War. And that's okay, I guess. The thing about Meathook Massacre is, like, in the most recent iterations of a lot of the decks, they're just being played in the sideboard, maybe 1 or 2 in the main deck. I mean, I don't think this is one of the best cards, but I understand why they did this. And I think black is still going to remain awesome, but I am excited to see what go-wide strategies might come out of this. The issue with a lot of go-wide strategies, though, is they often don't do well against black decks anyway. We'll see. One of the coolest things about this for me is I have a single paper Standard tournament to play this RCQ season that I plan on going to, and I am really excited to not have to buy any Meathook Massacres in Standard because they are $1 million, or at least were $1 million. So I'm really hyped about that. And Modern. So, I play 5-color creativity primarily. So I was really worried about a Wrenn and 6 ban. So they banned Yorion the Sky Nomad. So let's read why. I like this ban, by the way, but not for game reasons, like not for competitive reasons. So let's read why. Modern has been in a healthy place since the last banned and restricted update, with good diversity among archetypes and even the most popular competitive decks occupying a relatively small slice of the metagame. I agree with that. However, as tabletop Modern play continues to rebound since the height of the pandemic, we decided to enact a change that we've been considering by some time by banning Yorion Sky Nomad. Yorion most commonly appears as a companion in 4-color Omnath decks, which show a strong win rate, and according to our matchup data, are likely to continue to rise in popularity. In addition to game balance concerns with the deck, we're also factoring the physical dexterity requirements of playing with a large deck for tabletop. We're wary of the metagame, reaching a point where players are playing the deck because of its perceived strength and win rate, despite not enjoying how cumbersome it can be to operate. While these physical dexterity issues exist to a lesser degree in other formats like Pioneer, Modern specifically entails more shuffling and other physical card manipulation because of deep card pools and card selection spells, fetch lands, and so on. Cards encouraging large decks like Battle Blitz have existed in the past, but usually on the fringes of competitive play rather than as one of the strongest decks. Finally, we've also heard from many players that the repeated triggers caused by Yorion, and many of the cards surrounding it, can lead to repetitive gameplay patterns and long games with lots of downtime between the other players' actions. It's important that the net player experience playing with the top decks is a fun one. And while we're okay with such decks existing, it can make the format less enjoyable when these patterns are associated with one of the strongest decks over a long period of time. Therefore, to make Modern as fun and as accessible as it can be for all types of players, Yorion the Sky Nomad is banned in Modern. I really like this ban. So I played 4-color Yorion for a pretty long time. I enjoyed playing the deck on Magic Online. In paper, it was awful. Like the first time I dropped my 80-card deck on a floor in the middle of a tournament wasn't great. Like, I have small hands. I genuinely have small hands for a person my size and age. So, like, it was really hard to shuffle the 80-card deck. I ended up just, like, dividing it into 2, shuffling both sides a whole bunch, and then jamming it together once, which was pretty miserable for, like, as much as you needed to fetch, often fetching for one-ofs, with fetch lands. So Yorion the Sky Nomad being banned is, I think, pretty awesome. I disagree with the talking about how it's, like, I do think it's one of the better decks. I don't think it's one of the best decks in Modern right now. I think people have kind of figured it out. There's a big reason why I went off of it. And Yorion isn't really the reason why it's good, which is, I think they hinted at that. I think the big reason for this ban, at least the big reason I agree with it, is the dexterity issues associated with it. It is really unfair being literally unable to play a deck because of a card, right? My wife, for example, like, wanted to play a deck that required Yorion and is just unable to because, like, shuffling a double sleeve deck already is difficult. Imagine an 80-card one. Like, that's not cool. So I really like this for dexterity issues. As far as competitive reasons to ban this, I disagree with it. Like, I don't think this is Yorion is a competitive problem. I do think it's really unfun, the cards that often have to surround Yorion if it's worth it to play Yorion. I definitely agree with that. Like, I've had some sick Omnath turns where I'm just, like, playing with my own deck for, like, 3 minutes while my opponent just waits, and which is not a big deal in Magic Online, in my opinion, but is a really big deal in paper. Like, it feels really awkward just, like, doing stuff, and Yorion can make that worse. From a competitive side, I'm actually really surprised Ren and 6 wasn't banned. So I was really convinced Ren and 6 is going to be banned. Well, that would have been bad for me being a 5-color creativity player. Ren and 6 is just the most powerful card in just every deck it's played in. It allows you to play 5-color without, like, any, like, drawbacks to speak of, especially with more of these domain cards being printed. Makes playing 5-color, like, even stronger, especially, like, Leyline Binding. Pushed a lot of decks over the top. And Ren and 6 allows you to do that for often basically free. The issue with Modern, though, is that if you have fetch-based Ren and 6 decks, you're plussing Ren and 6 to get a fetch back almost every single turn, and you're shuffling, looking for one-ofs. It can lead to some really, really annoying things from, like, a tournament organizer's point of view, where you're just, like, every single turn you're looking through your deck, which is, like, it takes super long to get through a bunch of turns. Which, to be fair, one of the big issues with that was with the Yorion deck, so maybe that'll be better moving forward. But I also think, like, it being pretty free to play for 5 colors as long as you play Ren and 6 is also a little weird. But maybe Modern's the format for that. I'm not 100% sure. I'm glad Ren and 6 is not banned because I get to keep playing my favorite deck. But I'm surprised Ren and 6 is not banned. I really like this Yorion ban. I didn't even think of the dexterity issues, but I totally agree with that. So there you have it. These bans are effective on Magic Online today, October 10th, and are effective in Magic Arena on October 13th, and tabletop effective today, October 10th. So moving forward, Yorion the Sky Nomad, Meathook Massacre banned. What do you think about these bans? I think Meathook Massacre is kind of a shrug at, and I really agree with the Yorion ban. Really surprised Ren and 6 is not banned. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. If you want to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe. Check me out on other social medias, especially on Twitch. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.